The reports of chaos and confusion in Iran are multiplying as car bombs continue to go off in the streets. Air defense systems near nuclear sites are working non-stop, and reports emerged of more nuclear scientists eliminated. And elsewhere, a Revolutionary Guard's stronghold is flooded with sewage, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced we eliminated the IRGC intelligence chief and his deputy in Tehran. However, it was also a difficult night here in Israel, as the latest barrage from Iran sent millions of us to bomb shelters, and hours later, the reports came in that there were 5 more fatalities amongst Israel's civilian population from a direct hit on a residential building in Tel Aviv. As we're recording this video, rescue crews from Magen David Adom are still rescuing people who are trapped in the rubbles. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, bringing you all the information about what is happening in the direct war between Israel and Iran. Today is the 4th day of Operation Rising Lion, and we are here to bring you nothing but the whole truth about what is happening in Israel. Defense Minister Israel Katz said on Sunday evening that the boastful dictator from Tehran has become a cowardly murderer who deliberately fires at Israel's civilians' rear in order to deter the IDF from continuing the offensive that is collapsing his capabilities. The residents of Tehran will pay the price, and soon. As if to prove this point, dramatic reports soon emerged from Tehran that the IDF destroyed a missile launch site a few seconds before the missiles were supposed to be fired towards Israel, destroying the crew, the equipment, and the missiles themselves. And meanwhile, new satellite images are emerging of the results of Israel's strikes on Iran, showing among other things that the IDF struck the nuclear site at Fordo, and the Wall Street Journal quoted an Israeli source who claimed that there are signs that the underground compound at the Natanz facility collapsed. This is how the damage looks in the satellite images and also at the missile bases. The Air Force of Israel also attacked the IRGC Quds Force headquarters in Tehran, causing heavy damage. We'll also take a look at the map of the nuclear and the missile targets that were hit, and the site that is still almost untouched, the heart of the nuclear program that observed a full-scale blitz, and the facility that was destroyed. We'll also tell you about the wave of car bomb assassinations of scientists in Tehran that strike on gas facilities as a message to the Ayatollahs, and the fortified site on the mountains that was not yet hit. These are the targets of Operation Rising Lion, and the bonus, we'll also analyze a satellite photo of Air Force bomb damage at distances of up to 2,300 kilometers from Israel. In short, in this war with Iran, Israel is carrying out many operations all over the country, and the goal is not only to pressure the leaders but also to break their pride and make them look weak and helpless in front of their own people. And speaking of which, immediately after Israel opened its attack on Iran, Iranian leader Ali Khamenei was moved to an underground bunker in northeast Tehran, and Israel knew exactly where he was, but according to several sources, Israel decided to leave him alive to give him a chance to change his mind about the nuclear issue. This war needs to end with Iran's surrender, and if Khamenei is out of the picture, it's unclear who would have the stature and the authority to sign a surrender agreement. That is the only reason that this evil man is being left alive for now. TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will take us through all the details of what United States President Donald Trump told reporters yesterday about this situation, including his declaration that Israel and Iran might have to fight it off. It's important to remember what he said next, though, that the United States will continue to support Israel in defending itself. For their part, the Iranians are continuing to be their own worst enemies, arrogantly declaring that they will not negotiate under fire and giving Israel all the justification we need to continue demolishing their economic, military, and strategic assets. An Iranian statement that demonstrates this tragic refusal to acknowledge reality said simply, "It is our right to enjoy nuclear energy and research that serves our people." However, the truth is that the regime is already losing control over its own people, many of whom are eager to work with Israel to get rid of this wicked and cruel regime which has oppressed them for so many years. The regime seems to be aware of this and is responding in the only way that they know how, by cracking down on its population with brutal force, arresting anyone it suspects of collaboration with Israel, imprisoning, torturing, and even executing dozens over the past 3 days. An opposition group declared the path to salvation lies in combining protests, awareness, and popular action, and called for uniting to topple the regime, not out of love for Israel, but out of hatred for the Ayatollahs. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 621 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are taking their orders from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. Now, a moment before we start, I want to invite you to pause this video for a second and help us share the truth with anybody who wants to know what really is happening in Israel. So guys, the best way you can do that is hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, let's start today's report by taking a look at the night that Israelis have just come through, which was difficult for many of us, including me and my family. A deadly barrage of ballistic missiles from Iran caused massive destructions as well as 5 fatalities in the cities of Petah Tikva and Bnei Brak in central Israel, and several people had to be rescued after being trapped under the rubble of destroyed buildings in Haifa, and dozens of others were injured all over the country. Sadly, although protected spaces have saved many lives in this war, the 3 people who were killed in Petah Tikva last night were killed when a missile scored a direct hit on the protected room that they were in. So Magen David Adom issued an update a few hours later saying that a total of 5 people have been killed in the attack, 4 of them in Petah Tikva, including 2 women in their 70s and a man in his 70s who were inside a protected room, and another man who was about 80 who was killed in Bnei Brak. So far, Magen David Adom teams have evacuated 92 wounded people to hospitals. Magen David Adom spokesman Zaki Heller said, "When a missile scores a direct hit on a structure, it may be that even the protected room there will not withstand such a massive hit. We go apartment by apartment and make sure that there are no casualties. In the main incident, 2 buildings with 20 floors, the searches included in each of the apartments, and we treated 43 injured." Magen David Adom truly are the heroes of this war on Israel's home front. Israelis are under attack as never before, with including missiles and rockets from the north, from the south, and from the east. And there is also the threat of terror attacks in the streets all the time. It feels like no place is truly safe. But in the middle of all this chaos, there's one name that you keep hearing: Magen David Adom. They're the ones rushing in when others are running out, treating the injured, saving lives every day. But let's be real, they cannot do it alone. They take ambulances, trauma kits, training, armored gear. It takes resources, and that's where we come in. We have a saying in Israel: whoever saves one life in Israel, it is as if they've saved an entire world. That's not just a nice quote, that's the truth on the ground. So, if you want to do something real, go to savelifeisrael.com. Again, that's savelifeisrael.com. Support Magen David Adom. Be part of saving lives. Now, let's quickly move to the Israeli strike in Iran over the last 24 hours. In the past 24 hours, Israel's Air Force has operated with great intensity on the third day of this campaign in the city of Tehran and beyond it. The list of targets was long and included the Ministry of Defense headquarters, the Revolutionary Guards headquarters, the National Nuclear Headquarters, the Nuclear Archive, police facilities, laboratories linked to the nuclear project, missile launchers, gas facilities, and a fuel installation at the port of Bandar Abbas. In the evening, the Air Force struck at Mashhad Airport, about 2,300 kilometers from Israel, and destroyed a refueling aircraft of Iran's Air Force, which is important for tactical and strategic reasons, but also because it is a point of pride for the Iranians that they have such an aircraft. And overnight, between Sunday and Monday, Iran reported that the IDF struck the Fordo nuclear facility, Iran's second main enrichment site, located near the Shiite holy city of Qom. This is a fortified site situated about 80 to 90 meters underground in the mountainside. The Wall Street Journal wrote overnight that Fordo is Israel's greatest challenge and noted that Israel will probably need United States assistance to destroy it. The aid would have to come in the form of the strongest American bunker buster bomb in the United States arsenal, the MOP, or Massive Ordnance Penetration, also known by the code name GBU-57. This is an enormous 12.3-ton bomb, and according to the United States Air Force estimates, it can penetrate to a depth of about 60 meters. But American officials have reportedly discussed the possibility of dropping 2 such bombs in succession to ensure the destruction of even deeper sites. And at the same time, the journal cited an Israeli source assessment that there are signs that the underground portion of the Natanz facility has collapsed. However, he noted that additional checks are needed to verify these signs. And meanwhile, satellite images arrived overnight from Natanz and a variety of other sites in Iran, including missile bases, showing some of the damage caused by Israeli strikes in Iran in recent days. Iran also claimed overnight that a structure used to manufacture UAVs for the Mossad was uncovered in the city of Rey, not far from Tehran. The Air Force also destroyed dozens of missiles launchers, which is important because without the launchers, the missiles themselves are useless. So you might have heard reports that Iran has thousands of missiles, which may or may not still be true, but they definitely are running out of launchers, and that's the important part. In addition, an unseen hand eliminated several nuclear scientists by detonating their vehicles in the streets of Tehran over the last 24 hours. Of course, the regime is blaming the Mossad, Israel's spy agency, but they've got plenty of domestic enemies as well, not to mention other foreign intelligence agencies from a variety of different countries who would also have been happy to remove these people from the chessboard. In general, there appears to be a concrete campaign underway to undermine the sense of security amongst Tehran's residents, including a particularly revolting attack on the plumbing system that ended up dumping millions of gallons of raw sewage water into the streets of the city. Was this a cyber attack or an old-fashioned sabotage operation, and who did it? We might never know, but for now, it's enough to know that this is adding another layer to the misery of the ordinary Iranians and the suffering that they're going through because of the actions of their wicked and cruel regime, the Ayatollah regime. And amidst all of this, residents are leaving Tehran as quickly as they can, however they can, and massive convoys of cars were seen leaving the city, with most moving north to more rural areas around shores of the Caspian Sea. And meanwhile, an eyewitness to the strikes in Tehran told Reuters that several areas were indeed attacked simultaneously and called on Iran's supreme leader, "They just attacked right now, Khamenei, and the war." In addition, Iran's Fars news agency reported that an Israeli UAV hit a Tehran police building, injuring a number of police officers. Even as Iranian missiles were hitting northern and central Israel overnight between Sunday and Monday, Israeli aircrafts continued to strike dozens of targets in Tehran in less than an hour, in the largest air offensive since the beginning of this campaign. So the IDF spokesperson's unit gave details of this strike, saying that the Air Force continues to act to achieve air superiority throughout the skies of Iran. And on that note, this week, the Air Force revealed that it is able to operate UAVs over Iranian skies, flying 1,500 kilometers and staying airborne for 21 consecutive hours. This enables the Air Force to carry out a launcher hunting operation and build an operational picture that complements the intelligence picture. And another IDF statement from Sunday said that the Air Force struck the Quds Force headquarters of the Revolutionary Guards and Iranian Army headquarters in Tehran, adding that Quds Force operatives in these headquarters were planning terror actions against Israel through the regime's proxies in the Middle East. This is the first official confirmation by the IDF of a strike against Quds Force headquarters in Iran's capital. All of this prompted Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz to declare on Sunday that the boastful dictator from Tehran has turned into a cowardly murderer who deliberately fires at Israel's civilians in order to deter the IDF from continuing the offensive that is collapsing his capabilities. The residents of Tehran will pay the price, and soon. In addition, amidst the strikes across the Islamic Republic, IDF Arabic language spokesman Avichai Aderi published for the first time an evacuation warning to residents of Iran on Sunday, saying in a post on X that this is an urgent warning to those currently at or in the near future at all munitions plants in Iran and the bodies assisting them. For your safety, we ask you to evacuate immediately from the plant areas and not return until further notice. Being near them endangers your life. Now, to give you some background to help you better understand what's going on, it is well known that the Iranian people are nationalists, a proud people, but the current regime, which rules that country with an iron fist, is very unpopular amongst the general public. What Israel is doing now unsettles the broader public, and there is reason to hope that they will hold their leaders to account, perhaps tomorrow or weeks to come from now. The Iranian leadership understands it is cornered, and as a result, it may escalate the fighting and respond not only against Israeli targets, but also against the United States bases, all production facilities in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Such an action would immediately draw the United States into this campaign. And in the meantime, the regime is doing what it knows best how to do, ruthlessly cracking down on its own people, the Iranian people, arresting, torturing, executing domestic opponents, spies, real and imagined ones also, and anyone else that they think might be considered an enemy of this regime. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development in the airstrikes in Iran and on how our brave pilots are changing the rules of this game in the Middle East. So guys, keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. And the most important thing that you can do is hit the subscribe button and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And now, we turn to TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst, Mati Shoshani, who will take us through the latest developments in our neighborhood, the Middle East. Mati, these are not easy days for us. Iran has informed Qatar and Oman that it is not prepared to conduct ceasefire negotiations as long as it is under attack by Israel, which is what United States President Donald Trump is urging them to do. Because of Iran's refusal to go along with what he wants, President Trump is quickly losing patience with them. On Sunday evening, he declared that the United States might intervene in the confrontation between Israel and Iran. This is exactly what Israel is hoping for, that the United States would join the offensive and deploy its game-changing weapons to completely wipe out the Islamic Republic's principal nuclear sites. Mati, what is going on?
Thank you, Yair. Now let me read you some numbers that I think are going to get people really interested in the scale of what's been going on in Iran. So hear me out over here. Okay, so one of the heads of military intelligence in Iran that was assassinated, his name is Malhabi. He was the head of intelligence and cyber. His death disables 70% of Iran's damage battle assessment capabilities. On top of this person, 22 generals are killed, 31 command centers are destroyed, and 6 drone bases are wiped out. And if I remind you what was happening in the days before the list I just read you, so here's what it is. You have the head of the IRGC, you have the chief of the staff of the army, you have the chief scientists that are leading the nuclear program for the Iranians, all wiped out. So we're multiple days into this attack, and the tally of death and destruction to the Iranians is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, mind you, there has been a tally also on the Israeli population, but these are civilians that are targeted and hurt instead of the heads of governmental, well, how do we call them? Just dictatorial and evil regimes that Israel has been targeting in Iran. So a very substantial difference, a very substantial delta between what Israel's been doing and what the Iranians have been doing. So here's what we're going to talk about for the next couple minutes. One, we're at a really, really interesting place. Things are moving at a rapid speed, and I say this every week, but now it really is true, and it is dramatic in a way that wasn't foreseeable, that hasn't been seen in a very long time. Israel has caused an incredible amount of damage to the Iranians, and we're entering the point where we now need to figure out what the next steps are, what the next step for Israel is, what the next step for the US is, and what the next step for the Iranians is. So let me start with the US, which I think is one of the most interesting factors here. General Kurilla, who's the head of CENTCOM, Central Command for the US, he requests that he's given additional carrier groups. He's anticipating that he will need to step in or to safeguard the region that he's currently acting in around Iran and as it relates to the deal with Israel. And within the US, this causes a split and possibly a question mark over the fact of what they should be focusing on. Because up till now, they've been focusing on China and the South China Sea, of course, on engaging in the Ukrainian-Russian war through equipping the Ukrainians to a great degree now by direct warfare. And the third part is involvement in the Middle East and what's been happening here. And you combine those things together, there's a lot of assets that are going out to this part of the world that need to be taken into account. And of course, the question is what's going to happen with US involvement in the day after. We were expecting and have been expecting them to take military action. And since they haven't yet, my anticipation is the next thing we're going to see from them is a very substantial shift in pushing for an agreement, in pushing for Iran to, well, essentially ask for a ceasefire agreement that gives up on their nuclear program and allows Israel to take a break from the attacks on Iran and move on to an agreement that will leave them without nuclear capabilities. And I think that's the next big step when it comes to diplomacy in this conflict. On the military level, this is important for me to note, we're not done yet with the attacks. The numbers vary, but let's say Israel's about halfway through destroying the targets it absolutely wants to destroy in Iran. And I would say that if you ask the Iranians, they're nowhere done trying to fight back against Israel. So there's probably multiple more days of this back and forth tit-for-tat attack between Israel and the Iranians. Israel attacking strategic targets, the Iranians trying to carpet bomb Israel with ballistic missiles, something they've done with limited but some success in recent days. One of the most important things to focus on this multiple-day war between Israel and the Iranians is how much catastrophic failure represents of Iran's strategic plans. Think about it from their perspective for a second. The Iranians didn't see Israel's attack coming at all, even though there was a ton of SIGINT, which is, let's call it electronic intelligence, indications of Israel's upcoming attack. even though they knew the Americans were evacuating their bases in the Middle East and some of their embassies in the Middle East. Even though they had plenty of information indicating this attack was happening, they didn't respond in time. And the reason is because they had come accustomed to believe in their own conceptions, their conceptions about Israel and their conceptions about the West. And I believe, and I think there are quite a few others who would hold this opinion, that they believed that they understood Israel and they understood the West, and they knew how many buttons they can push and still get away with their nuclear push. And clearly, they were wrong. They didn't see Israel's attack coming. They had no idea how deep we had penetrated their intelligence organizations, their military, and their country physically. And when they figured it out, it was too late. Because by the time they figured it out, most of these shot callers in the Iranian government were no longer alive. And this is something really important to understand. One of the biggest achievements on an intelligence level for Israel in this conflict against Iran, of a direct war between Israel and Iran, I mean, albeit it's fought mostly over the air, but it is a real war. The biggest achievement of all of this is the fact that Israel was able to eliminate most of the command chain in Iran. So the people that were supposed to decide on launching missiles are gone. The people that were supposed to decide on bringing assets underground are gone. The people that were supposed to decide to shut down facilities related to the nuclear program and hide them away or move them to alternative locations, gone. The people that were supposed to make decisions as it comes to protecting or shutting down facilities expecting cyber attacks, they too were gone. So Iran found itself in its greatest day of need without the leadership that was supposed to tell them what to do in those moments across many of the levels of government and military. Just think about it this way. The head of the IRGC was picked off before this attack even started in earnest. And the fact is that the people that were supposed to indicate that now is the time to press this button, or to start this system, or to launch the counterstrikes, or to launch the missiles, or to pull the air defenses from one site to a secondary site where they wouldn't be known to Israeli intelligence, well, those people were simply dead by the time that attack materialized. And because of that, Israel was able to gain air superiority in a country that's over 1,000 miles away and maintain that air superiority for multiple days at this point. Here's what gets really interesting. We're entering a point in a time where the next phase of this is going to be a global scale shift. It's going to be something that involves the US, probably Russia, obviously the Iranians, obviously Israel, and my guess would be also Saudi, Qatar, UAE to one degree or another. All these countries want Iran to not, well, except for Iran obviously, want the Iranians to no longer have a bomb, but also want to be part of reshaping and restabilizing the region. And the way they're going to do that is trying to reach an agreement that is the interim, and by interim I mean it's probably going to end up being a long-term ceasefire agreement. By doing that, they're going to be the people behind the fact that Iran sort of gives up for the time being, or possibly years to come, on their nuclear capabilities. And behind this are going to be the US and specifically Israel that want to reshape the balance of powers in this region such that it no longer allows Iran to rebuild that power in the way they had previously done. And the reason this is super interesting, the reason this is super important, is because Iran's been spending decades and tens of billions of dollars building up these capabilities. And in a matter of days, Israel removed most of their internal capabilities. And within the last 18-month period, Israel was able to chip away at the majority, the vast majority, of their export doctrine of terrorism. The ring of fire that included Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the Syrians, and countless other smaller factions that were supposed to all put fear in the heart of Israel, they're all gone. And Israel has been striking deep in Iran in a way they've never seen coming. I think for many years now we're going to be studying the catastrophic failure of the Iranian doctrine as it relates to Israel and the US. I think many more facts are going to come out that indicate the level of brilliance that came to this attack, but also the level of misunderstanding and lack of knowledge that the Iranians had about the way decisions were made within Israel. I don't think they knew this attack was coming to this degree. I don't think they expected other countries to know about this attack and let it come, and I don't think they knew we were going to be able to knock out so much of their leadership in such a short amount of time. Listen, guys, Iran's center of gravity, Iran's sort of, cause and methodology have been broken in a way that will take a very long time to happen. And as this happens and they continue to experience daily raids by the Israeli Air Force and continue to launch whatever missiles they have left, and by the way, they have several thousand of them apparently left to attack Israel, all eyes are on President Trump and his ability to bring an agreement that will end the war between Israel and Iran, but end it in a note where the Iranians no longer have nuclear capabilities, and Israel is safe to fly the skies of this region once more and not fear the threat of an Iranian bomb or an Iranian terrorism act by them directly or by a proxy for many years to come. Now back to Yair Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mati Shoshani, for all the information and for bringing clarity to this very confusing situation. And to our dear viewers, please help us spread the truth and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, let's quickly review what has happened since the beginning of Operation Rising Lion. So far, 720 military infrastructures and 170 targets have been hit, and this is according to the IDF. This has all happened in Iran, which is about 1,500 kilometers from Israel, in less than 3 days, and this list is probably already out of date because the operation is ongoing and continues even as you're watching this video. The operation, launched on the night between Thursday and Friday, aims to remove Iran's nuclear threat and its ballistic missile threat, but for now, it is unclear how much damage has been done to those two programs. Much work still remains to be done, and key nuclear sites such as the Fordo have not yet been seriously damaged. Also, as we know all too very well, Iran's missiles continues to fall in Israel and cause enormous destruction to the civilian areas in this country. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims that already significant damage has been inflicted on the nuclear program, which has been delayed quite a bit, and the danger of an immediate nuclear breakout has reduced, at least for now. In any case, Israel is preparing for many more days of war. Most of the Israeli airstrikes have been directed at military targets, including missile bases and air defensive systems, the extensive damage to which guarantees air superiority and freedom of action for the Israeli Air Force. Those systems were also hit from the ground in an unprecedented Mossad operation that established a secret explosive drone base on Iranian soil. The strikes also eliminated the top security leadership of Iran's army and the Revolutionary Guards, and to cripple the broad knowledge base that Iran had accumulated in its nuclear program, at least 14 nuclear scientists were also targeted for elimination. And in the last 24 hours, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also hinted at yet another goal: overthrowing the Ayatollah regime. He has several times called on the Iranian people to rise up, and on Sunday evening he told Fox News that it is possible this will be the result of the operation. He added that the Iranian regime is very weak. Only two things remain for it: the plan for nuclear bombs and the ballistic missiles. That's about all that Iran has. The people they don't have. Now, once again, let's take a closer look at the targets that the Israeli Air Force says with high confidence it has destroyed so far. The headquarters of the SPND, which is the Organization for Defense Innovation and Research in Iran. This organization is responsible for scientific research with military applications. It was headed until his 2020 assassination by Moshe Farhizadeh, known as the father of the Iranian bomb. The organization effectively continued Project Ahmad for nuclear weapon development after his death, even though it was officially halted in 2003. Facilities for developing chemical materials as part of the nuclear project are for producing uranium enrichment centrifuges have also been struck, along with the Iranian Ministry of Defense headquarters, Revolutionary Guards headquarters, and Tehran police headquarters. In addition, the IDF and the Mossad have carried out targeted assassinations of dozens of senior officials, including the Chief of Staff Muhammad Bagheri, Revolutionary Guards Commander Hussein Salami, IRGC Air Force Commander Amir Ali Khajadadeh, and Revolutionary Guards Intelligence Chief Muhammad Kazemi and his deputy Hassan Muhakkak. Ali Shamkhani, a senior advisor to the Supreme Leader Khamenei, was also terminated, but Khamenei himself has not been hit. It was reported that United States President Donald Trump vetoed a plan to assassinate this evil man, but Israel denies this report. And meanwhile, the fate of the Quds Force chief Ismail Qani remains in question. However, it is confirmed at this point that 14 nuclear scientists were also eliminated, headed by Firyauddin Abbasi, a former head of Iran's Atomic Energy Agency, who survived a previous assassination attempt in 2010. The IDF spokesperson's office said that all the scientists and the experts who were eliminated were central knowledge hubs in the Iranian nuclear project with decades of accumulated experience in nuclear weapon development. Air defense systems in Tehran, its environment, and western Iran were also struck to secure Israeli air superiority. Netanyahu said that the Air Force thus opened an aerial highway to Tehran. In his Fox News interview, he added, "Now we can pick the targets that we need in Tehran and elsewhere without our planes being shut down, and so far, not one of our planes has been shut down, and I hope that it will stay this way." Additionally, a central fuel terminal that, according to the IDF, served Iranian forces has been hit, and the fires from this facility lit up the night sky all over Tehran. Israeli officials made no secret of the fact that this was done in order to send a message to the Iranian leadership and the general public that it is a bad idea for them to target the Israeli cities. Two can play that game, and Israel can play it much better than Iran can at this point. And speaking of which, the military hangars at Mehrebad International Airport were also hit, along with another facility for storing ballistic missiles at the Bid Ganech base. Also, Tabriz Airport, which hosts Iran's fleets of obsolete MiG-29 and F-5 fighters aircrafts, was destroyed, and this is according to the IDF. The Esfahanabad Sefah missile city, storing Qiyam-1 and Fateh 110 missiles, were also struck, resulting in heavy damage. However, the nuclear program was also hit hard, including the massive facilities at Natanz. Natanz, Iran's primary enrichment site and the heart of the nuclear program, can house up to 50,000 centrifuges in its main underground facility about 8 meters below the ground. Reuters said that about 16,000 are currently there, but the real number might be much higher. Israel says that significant damage was caused to this facility already, but has not clarified if the underground plant was completely destroyed. Near the city of Isfahan is another large nuclear research center where the next stage after enrichment is taken. This facility was also hit, and the IDF says it suffered significant damage. And finally, the facility at Parchin, about 30 kilometers southeast of Tehran, where tests linked to the nuclear explosive device were conducted in the past, was also damaged. There were also reports of strikes in the area of Arak. This is a site of Iran's heavy water reactor, but satellite images show no damage yet. The city of Bushar and the South Pars has a gas field, including a gas processing plant critical to Iran's power grid, was struck, along with gas facility at the port of Bandar Abbas that was also hit, causing massive fires which were visible from great distances in all directions. And finally, the Shiraz ballistic missile factory was also struck and sustained heavy damage. After summing up all the strikes, let's move on to the information that we've received. But first, give a click to the subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth of what is happening in Israel, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Getting back to the subject of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, sources in the regime told the Iran International News portal that this evil man was moved to an underground bunker in Lavizan, northeast of Tehran, a few hours after Israel began its attacks on Tehran in the early hours of Friday. And according to the sources, all members of Khamenei's family, including his son Mujtaba, are still with him. The sources said that Khamenei also relocated to the bunker during Iran's previous attacks on Israel, but at that time only his son Mujtaba stayed with him. His two other sons, Masoud and Mustafa, were not present. These reports come in the wake of Sunday's events, in which Israel struck the city of Mashhad, located 2,300 kilometers from Israel, for the first time. A Middle Eastern diplomatic source said that the Israeli airstrikes in Mashhad was a warning to Iran's supreme leader that he is not safe anywhere in the country. The source added that Israel could have eliminated Khamenei on the first night of the operation, but Israel's government chose to leave him alive to give him a final chance to order the complete dismantling of the Islamic Republic's uranium enrichment program. This was in parallel with the deadline set by Trump to Khamenei to agree to dismantle Iran's enrichment program, a deadline that the supreme leader ignored. When Israel's airstrikes began, this opportunity was offered to Khamenei again, after he would more realistically assess Israel's military capability and order the dismantling of the enrichment program. If I can make a brief comment of my own, Khamenei is probably not being given good information by his own people, otherwise even he would not be able to deny the reality of what is happening right now in front of his face. If he has not decided to surrender yet, it is either because he doesn't realize how hopeless the situation is for his regime, or he does not care. It's quite obvious that he doesn't care about the hardships of his own people and what they're going through because of this insane agenda that the Islamic Republic has pursued for most of the past 50 years. Now that the bill for all of this is finally coming due, I hope for their sake that someone, maybe one of his sons who is there with him in the bunker and who might be a little bit more pragmatic, is ready to take the obvious step and surrender before the entire country is destroyed. I know we have many viewers in Iran as well as the Iranian diaspora around the world, and I want you to know that we are praying for you to be freed from this evil and tyrannical regime soon. And we look forward to living in peace and cooperation with you in the future, just as we did before in the past, before this wicked regime hijacked your country in 1979. In any event, here at TBN Israel, we will continue reporting the full truth, so guys, please share and follow us. Most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Adding to what I just said a moment ago, in recent days, voices around the world have called on the Iranian people to topple the regime, including Benjamin Netanyahu's direct appeal to the Iranian people to revolt and the opening of the Starlink internet services by billionaire Elon Musk to allow groups to organize and more. The Iranian people have long been oppressed by the regime, which has spared no means to silence protests and prevent any opportunity for rebellion. But now, following the wide-scale attacks, it appears that the regime has been severely shaken, and a great opportunity may have arisen for the people of Iran to regain control. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was interviewed on Sunday evening on Fox News, where he said, "Our intelligence shows that Iran wanted to transfer nuclear capability to the Houthis in Yemen." In his remarks, he addressed why Israel launched the offensive in the first place, relations with the United States, the possibility of toppling the Iranian regime, and much more. And now, I want to take a moment and speak from my own heart and say something important to all of you guys. Imagine for a moment a world in which the reality we Israelis have gotten used to that Iran wants to wipe all of us out, men, women, children, and is actively working towards that goal with meticulous planning and massive resources simply no longer exist. The images from Bat Yam and Tamra, from Rishon LeZion and Ramat Gan, Israeli cities, are shocking and sear the soul. Every person killed is an entire world, and the hundreds of wounded will carry pain and trauma for the rest of their lives. The material damages is also immense and will take a long time and lots of money to repair. Even those untouched and relatively far from the impact sites are living in a disturbing reality that includes panic nightmare runs to bomb shelters and, above all, an unceasing sense of unease. Yes, our plans have been disrupted, some more, some less. Weddings are cancelled, places of work are shut down, children are back to noisy Zoom classes instead of being in school, and needed medical procedures are being delayed, and many are stuck abroad, not knowing when or how they'll return home to Israel. Yet all of this is insignificant compared with the reality that, according to intelligence officials, we were a stone's throw away from a reality in which the greatest enemy of the Jewish people since Nazi Germany, the one that declares its goal is our annihilation, would possess a nuclear bomb. Picture the railroad tracks, the cattle cars in rust brown, the entrance to Auschwitz, the ramp, the barking dogs, the SS officers, no selection, everyone to the crematoria, and in moments they rise to the heavens in one big towering mushroom cloud, not through chimneys, but through a single giant detonation. That is what was underlined for Israel, and that is what has now been put off and perhaps permanently prevented. Some fantasized for years when Iran achieved a nuclear weapon, a balance of mutual destruction would emerge between us and them, bringing redemption to Zion. There were those who said that the Iranians would not actually use their atomic bomb, just threaten us with it, so we'd stop fighting them on other fronts. With all due respect, that's what happens when you project Western thinking into the Middle East, especially into the Islamic regime in Iran, which is dominated by an extremist Islamic enemy. On October 7, we learned that the desire for our destruction is very real, and only a lack of capability prevented the enemies from carrying out its genocidal scheme. We cannot gamble that suddenly our enemies will cast aside their insane fantasies and switch to rational thinking. Now, imagine a different world, one without the Ayatollah regime in Iran. Does that sound fantastic? These days are hard, the nights even harder, but at the end of this tunnel, perhaps for the first time since the establishment of the State of Israel, shines an optimistic light that we never thought we'd see. I call on you to pray for this. Picture a world where Israeli companies can do businesses with that huge nation on the Persian Gulf, where Israeli planes can fly east without costly, needless detours. So let's pray for peace. Mati, you'll need to join me in prayer for the people of Israel and the people of Iran. Let's pray for the peace of the Iranian people who need our prayers so that they can free themselves from the rule of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards and gain independence. Pray for the citizens of Israel that are sitting in bomb shelters or near them at all times. Pray hard for IDF soldiers wherever they are, in the air, in the sea, and in land. Pray for the peace of our hostages that are still held in the Gaza Strip by Hamas. Pray that they return quickly and safely to their families back home. Pray for the people of Israel, and don't forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.